The girl was imprisoned for 3 years before she finally escaped. A mysterious tattoo of wings with fresh blood stains appeared on her back. It was tattooed on her by her captor on the day she was released. The police conducted a thorough examination and confirmed that she had been severely abused. A look of panic flashed across her eyes when she first met her parents. Then she was calm, as if she did not recognize the person in front of her at all. Time went back 3 years ago. Minky, a student who had just entered high school, suddenly disappeared on her way to school by bike. That day was also the day that Minky's mother, Sarah, held a market inauguration ceremony. The seat in Minky's classroom was still empty. When her parents and younger brother returned home, they could not find her anywhere. Luckily, Minky's father, Lucas, was a retired police officer, so Lucas quickly located Minky. But when Lucas arrived, all that was left was a phone thrown on the grass. From the tire tracks nearby, it was possible to infer that Minky had been kidnapped. The police collected Minky's DNA for comparison. They questioned her boyfriend and conducted a large-scale search of the area, but in the end, they only found a bicycle abandoned by the river. There were no other clues. All signs pointed to Minky's possible death, but Sarah did not give up. She printed thousands of missing person flyers. 3 years passed, and the whole family had lost hope when Lucas suddenly received a notice that Minky had appeared. A night driver found Minky on the side of the road, so he picked Minky up and took her to the police station. But 3 years was not a short time. Everything had changed. The relationship between Sarah and Lucas appeared to be broken. After their divorce, Lucas moved out. Sarah's new boyfriend, Robert, moved in with her. Minky had just returned home, so she needed a familiar environment to recover mentally. So Sarah asked Robert to temporarily move out. At the same time, she hung up the family photo of four. Minky timidly walked into the house, patted her brother's head, and called him by his old nickname. That moment made the whole family choke with emotion. Minky's room had been kept the same for 3 years. Her favorite stuffed animals were still there. The scene was very familiar, but when her mother was about to close the door, she suddenly screamed. Perhaps the memories of her time in captivity came flooding back. Minky felt extremely insecure. Even when she took a shower, she had to leave the bathroom door open. Lucas passed by and stood there watching for a long time. Then Lucas took out his phone and took a picture of Minky. Unexpectedly, at that time, Minky looked at Lucas's back as he left and smiled strangely. Sarah also felt that something was wrong. Minky had always been cold to her family, but now she took the initiative to hug Sarah. But that hug made Sarah feel strange. It was as if this returning daughter was no longer her real daughter. Lucas thought that Minky had been imprisoned by a pervert for 3 years, so no matter who it was, their mentality would change. It was not surprising. However, that very night, Minky sat in the bedroom and her mind kept replaying the memories of when she was kidnapped. Just then, the alarm rang. Minky seemed to be controlled. She pulled open the back door leading to the yard and walked out barefoot. Outside the gate was a man wearing a lion mask. Next to him was a man wearing a tongue mask. He handed him a gun. Then, Sarah had a premonition that something was wrong and woke up with a start. Sarah went to Minky's room and found that Minky was no longer on the bed. The floor was covered with dry leaves and mud. Sarah looked closely and saw that Minky was lying under the bed. Perhaps Minky had suffered torture and panic. That's why Minky considered the darkness under the bed the safest place. Lucas searched all the tattoo parlors in the city. A tattoo artist with his arms covered in drawings claimed that he had never met Minky. But when Lucas left, his face suddenly became panicked. At this time, the policewoman brought the test results. Minky had found a lot of animal DNA on her, mainly lions and tigers. They could follow the clues from zoos or veterinary clinics, but neither of them knew that Minky was watching them from a distance with a gun. Sarah invited a psychologist to treat Minky. He tried to help her lower her defenses, but for several hours, Minky just kept a blank expression. Before leaving, the doctor gave Sarah a phone so that Minky could contact her old friends to help her find herself. Lucas asked every tattoo shop, but he still got nothing, until Lucas reviewed the photo and discovered that in the jeweled mirror, there was a strange smile reflected in Minky. At the same time, a female police officer called to report that they had found a fingerprint on Minky. The fingerprints were of a man named DuPont, 48 years old. DuPont had been arrested for child abuse. DuPont had just been released 3 months before Minky went missing. DuPont was currently working as a zoo manager. At the zoo, a man suddenly cut his wrist with a knife. He tried to hold back pain, put on a lion mask, and without hesitation, jumped into the lion enclosure in front of many people. The smell of fresh blood made the 7 hungry lions come in droves. After the screams, everything was quiet again. The dead man was DuPont, the suspect the police were looking for. The cut on his wrist showed that he had no intention of living. But the strange thing was that his temple had a dent, as if he had been held against his head by a gun. There were also many old wounds on his arms, showing that he had been tied up and tortured. This was completely unlike the image of a villain. Was DuPont another victim? At 1 a.m., the alarm rang again like before. Minky went out to the front yard again. The masked man was still there. Only this time, the stone masked man was nowhere to be seen. A woman in black suddenly appeared in front of Minky and handed her a bullet. Minky smiled terrifyingly again. Then Minky held the gun and pointed it at Sarah. Then Minky turned and pointed the gun at Lucas. She remembered the men she had killed while in captivity. But in the end, Minky did not have the courage to pull the trigger to kill Lucas. Instead, Minky took the key from the nightstand. The psychiatrist still came to treat Minky every day. During the hypnosis, Minky's memory gradually recovered. Minky remembered the day she was released. A green van took him to the suburbs. The driver was the man wearing a stone mask. There was also a masked man inside. They spoke very little and did not allow anyone to speak. That made Minky afraid and did not dare to remember. In her mind, she built a wall to block out all the horrible memories. The doctor advised Minky to use hypnosis to break down that wall. But Sarah hesitated because she was afraid that doing so would make Minky relive pain again. As soon as the doctor left, Minky began to mumble to the window. The masked man appeared before her again. He knelt on the ground and held out the key with both hands. The police contacted DuPont's wife and learned that he had been missing for 3 years. She had to raise her daughter alone. Although DuPont had committed many crimes, he had reformed after his last release from prison. His wife insisted that he was not Minky's kidnapper. Another strange night, Sarah suddenly heard strange noises in the house. She went to look and found that someone had opened the door. Sarah was also tormented by strange phenomena to the point that she could not bear it. Sarah discussed hypnosis with Lucas. They both agreed that even if it meant making Minky relive painful memories, they had to find out who was behind it all. To help Minky return to normal life, Lucas wanted to talk to her, but Minky suggested that Lucas apply ointment to her tattoo. The scene was seen by Minky's younger brother, who was standing outside the door. He was worried that things would go too far, so he deliberately lit a fire that set off the alarm. Although he was scolded, he was secretly glad that he had prevented the situation from escalating. When Sarah passed by Minky's room, she heard Minky screaming. In her dream, Minky recalled the painful 3 years of captivity. All this time, Minky had been hiding under the bed because she felt like someone was watching her in her room, and it wasn't an illusion. In the closet, there was really a man wearing a falcon mask, watching Minky's every move. The next morning, when the zoo was cleaning, a janitor turned around and almost fainted. Inside the snake enclosure was a motionless body. Next to his hand was a tongue-shaped mask. In order to heal Minky's trauma, Lucas decided to take her back to school. Now, this place was completely unfamiliar to Minky. Only when she saw her old friend could she smile sincerely. But after 3 years, everything had changed. Minky's ex-boyfriend now had a new lover. Minky's eyes immediately showed disappointment. The masked man sneaked into Minky's house and installed cameras in all sorts of strange places. Just as he was about to leave, Lucas suddenly sat back down. He pulled out a sharp knife from the kitchen, but that small noise caught Lucas's attention. Lucas took his son's baseball bat and searched the house carefully. He noticed something unusual in Minky's closet, but when Lucas opened it, he only saw a pile of clothes hanging there. He completely failed to notice the person hiding in the corner of the closet holding the knife. At that moment, the policewoman called to report the massacre at the zoo. After Minky left, the masked man grabbed Minky's stuffed animal and pulled its head off. The second massacre at the zoo shocked the police. The victim's body had the same death posture as DuPont. Both had slit their wrists and entered the wildlife area. Both were suspects in Minky's kidnapping. The police also found a piece of paper in the lion dung. On it was a long riddle. The policewoman quickly decoded it. It was a message from the mastermind to "Guess who I am." The forensic examination showed that the second victim had been severely tortured before entering the snake area. His spine was broken in multiple places, and his hand had a gunshot wound that had been stitched up. His genitals were cut off. Before he died, he swallowed a piece of paper with the same riddle as the dead man at the zoo. This person had no criminal record, but his social media posts included a lot of disturbing content related to children. The police realized that they were dealing with a large-scale criminal organization. Lucas put all the clues together in the hope of finding some clues. But Lucas did not know that Minky was still quietly watching him from the yard with a hateful gaze. At the request of the family, the psychologist hypnotized Minky. He made her focus on the pendulum of a clock and then showed her the clothes she had worn when she returned home. The purpose was to evoke memories through scent when a certain time came. Minky imagined herself turning into a falcon and observing the world from a third-person perspective. She saw the scene 3 years ago. The masked man threw her into a car, but the car was not green, but blue. After that, Minky was taken to a house where the masked man was waiting. At that moment, Minky opened her eyes and saw the real masked man standing in the room. She screamed out loud because she was so scared, so the hypnosis was forced to stop. After the doctor left, Minky looked at the doll in horror. There was a camera inside the doll's eye. The stalker was watching her every move. Minky's phone suddenly received a text message. She smiled and told the stalker stalker that he would be proud of her. The text message was from her ex-boyfriend asking to meet. Minky got into his car. She didn't know that the masked man was following her. 3 years ago, they had many dates by the river. Although her ex-boyfriend had a new girlfriend, his nature had not changed. He wanted to reunite with Minky, but Minky was too disappointed. She took out the gun she carried and pointed it at him. Then she said, "Guess who I am?" But in the end, she couldn't cross the moral line. Before pulling the trigger, she pulled the gun back. He thought everything was over, but the masked man suddenly rushed over and strangled him. The masked man snatched the gun from Minky's hand and fired another shot at him. At the same time, the masked man reminded Minky that if she wanted to leave that tent, she had to complete the mission. Minky returned home in shock. Just remembering the scene just now made her legs weak. Minky fell to the floor. Sarah quickly helped Minky into the bathroom. Then Sarah intended to change Minky's wet clothes, but Minky suddenly changed. Minky yelled at Sarah to open her eyes. When Minky walked out of the bathroom, she immediately bumped into Lucas without avoiding him. Minky explained that her nerves were stimulated by the hypnosis, but Minky's parents always felt that after Minky returned, she had built a wall. She became more and more distant, so distant that she no longer looked like their daughter. Lucas broke down and cried. He returned to the workshop and tried to contact an acquaintance named David, the owner of the underground club. In addition to selling weapons, David also participated in many activities related to children. Lucas used the excuse of buying a gun to ask for information about the masked man and the lion head, but David insisted that the club had never had these two people. Lucas was at a dead end again. He hid the gun in a drawer in the workshop. Lucas's every move was monitored by his son. Meanwhile, Min-K was also quietly watching them from his private room. He took out a photo of the real family photo that the masked men left before leaving, but the people in the photo were not Lucas's family. Min-Kai took the photo and placed it on the nightstand. Her face was full of sadness. She said she missed everyone so much. Elsewhere, a falcon swooped down from above and landed precisely on the arm of a woman from a nearby blue car. Min-K's now dying boyfriend was being wheeled into an operating room inside a tent. The woman was pleased to see the doctor remove his organs. She arranged the specimens neatly. She had 5 men in her hands. The 6th glass vial bore a name. The woman opened the lipstick cap and applied lipstick to her mother, who was lying motionless on the bed, smiling and saying that the day was coming. At the same time, the police also took action. They contacted the masked man's parents and learned that before he died, he had confessed to his father that he had done unforgivable things to some girls. His father considered him a disgrace, so his father beat him up. His father even broke his ribs. The man with the tongue mask revealed that he had made a promise to someone and he had to keep it. Then he quietly walked into the snake breeding area. It sounded like a form of atonement for a sinner. But who did he promise to, and why did he use such a cruel method? In the middle of the night, Minky's younger brother sneaked into his father's room and stole the key to the workshop. As soon as he left, Minky came out of the dark, took off his head, and lay next to Lucas. Sarah noticed something unusual, so she pulled the blanket off the bed. Sarah saw Minky lying close to Lucas's back. This scene made all the adults present speechless. Minky innocently explained that she was too scared because of nightmares every night. That's why she ran into Lucas's room. Hearing this, Sarah didn't think she was blaming Minky. Sarah just hugged Minky sympathetically and slept with her. Meanwhile, the mysterious woman in the tent walked out to the backyard, where flies were swarming around the body of Minky's boyfriend. She looked at a girl who looked like Minky and whispered that all of this was because of her. Minky's younger brother entered Lucas's workshop. He picked up the gun in the drawer and played with it. He accidentally saw Minky's tattoo clues and the pictures hanging on the wall. He was so scared that he quickly put the gun away. The next morning, he pretended that nothing had happened and handed the workshop key back to Lucas. But he couldn't hide the panic in his heart. He went to see Robert and told him everything he had witnessed up to the day before. The crime photos hanging on the wall made him even more convinced that Lucas had a sick interest. Maybe Lucas had done something terrible to Minky. Neither of them realized that danger was approaching. The psychiatrist started Minky's second hypnosis session. She remembered that there was a man locked up in the shack. Then a girl was brought in. Masked men locked her up. The woman came down the stairs and called herself Sphinx. The masked men seemed to be very afraid of her. Remembering this, Minky panicked again, so the doctor had to stop the hypnosis. But the doctor realized that there was an organization behind it all. The doctor wanted to call the police, but it went to voicemail many times. On the way back, a car crashed into the doctor, and he fell down the mountainside. When the police arrived, the doctor was gone. There were cuts on the seatbelt, as if someone had pulled him out of the car. The policewoman took another missing person case. Minky's boyfriend had been missing for several days. The common point was that the last person they saw was Minky. Although Minky always acted innocent, Sarah began to feel that something was wrong. When Minky returned to her room, she received a call from Sphinx. The psychologist was locked in the tent. At that time, Sphinx saw Lucas knocking on Minky's door through the surveillance camera. Sphinx used another name, Minotaur. Minky intended to follow Sphinx's plan. But when Lucas led Minky to the workshop, she saw the wall full of clues. Minky felt that Lucas was trying his best to find the truth. Minky hugged Lucas with a sincere hug and then used a bottle of wine to cover the surveillance camera in the room. At the same time, Minky interrupted Sphinx's call. When Lucas returned to the workshop, Minky had changed the symbol on the wall. The suspect was changed from the dead masked man to David. Lucas immediately went to the club and threw the photo of the masked man on the table. David no longer denied it. He confessed that the two had colluded to commit many illegal acts. There were also photos as evidence in the laptop. Taking advantage of Lucas's lack of vigilance, David restrained him. David sarcastically said that Lucas seemed upright on the outside, but David had heard many people say that he was also involved in business related to children. Lucas angrily knocked David and his subordinates down. Then Lucas grabbed the gun back into the laptop. But Lucas did not go home. He sat in the car looking at old photos with Sarah. Memories of intimate times appeared. But strangely, the face of the woman in Lucas's memory was Minky. Lucas panicked and pulled out a gun to point at his head. At the same time, Sarah brought Minky's favorite toy and reminded her of the trip to Paris that the family had gone on. At that time, Minky almost disappeared because she was busy buying toys, but Minky just smiled and said nothing. To verify her suspicions, Sarah looked for Minky early the next morning and reminded her of the old days when she used to comb Minky's hair every morning and night. Minky pretended to reminisce, making Sarah even more certain that her suspicions were correct. Lucas fell asleep in the car outside the gate. Sarah quietly took his gun. After Sarah took Minky to school, she threw the gun into the stream far from home and then went to Robert's house. Minky's younger brother still refused to go to school, but he was haunted by the wall of clues. He promised to go to school, but in fact he returned home and set fire to the wall. This destroyed all of Lucas's investigation efforts. The real reason he acted like that was because ever since Minky went missing, Lucas had been immersed in alcohol and tea to find clues. After Minky returned, Lucas poured all his feelings into her, making his younger brother Minky feel abandoned. He became even more resentful when he saw the misleading photos on the wall. His ideal father image collapsed. Fortunately, Lucas realized his mistake in time and sincerely apologized. The two finally reconciled. Lucas agreed to take her younger brother to Robert's house to calm down. Robert wanted to help Sarah restore family ties, so he went to school to pick up Minky and take her home. No one expected Sarah to go to the police and ask for a DNA test to determine the paternity between her and Minky. This process took about 3 hours. While Robert was waiting at home, Minky accidentally saw intimate photos of him and Sarah. Only then did Minky realize that her parents had been divorced for a long time. They were just acting in front of her. She got angry and smashed things and used broken glass to kill Robert. In a panic, Minky called for help from Sphinx, but she only ordered Minky to complete the final task. Coincidentally, Lucas's younger brother was also at the scene. Seeing that Robert had lost too much blood, he immediately called an ambulance. He turned around and saw Minky's backpack. He immediately understood everything. When Sarah received the news, she rushed to the hospital. Robert was still in critical condition. Minky lost contact. At this time, Minky had used a knife to cut her wrist. She lay in despair in the fish tank. The masked man arrived in time and used a cloth to tie the wound to stop the bleeding. When Lucas returned home, Minky had been taken away by the masked man. Only the bathtub was left full of red blood. He was afraid that his daughter was in danger. At that moment, the DNA test results were also sent. They matched exactly what Sarah had predicted. The person who returned was not Sarah's biological daughter. The girl's DNA belonged to another strange girl. Sarah was so cautious because it all came from 2 tests. Their family had never traveled to Paris. Moreover, Minky had never let Sarah comb her hair. So who was the one who returned? In the tent, Sphinx was grieving over her reputation. She looked at herself in the mirror. She had unexpectedly awakened a compassionate personality. Sphinx told the psychiatrist to leave and be gentle. Otherwise, the real Sphinx in North Korea would be finished. At that moment, a girl ran up to stop Sphinx's actions. She was the real Minky. The story began with a girl named Lena. Lena's mother admitted that she was an alcoholic. Lena not only had to take care of her 2 younger sisters, but she also had to endure her stepfather's harassment. That day, when Lena took her younger sisters to school, a car pulled up while she was waiting for the bus. The door opened. Father put everything up and ran quickly, but Lena was no match for the 2 masked men. She had just climbed the mountain when she was stopped. She and her stepfather were locked in the hut. Soon another girl was captured. With nothing left to lose, Sphinx made the 2 girls introduce themselves and then gave them a riddle. Lena was very smart, so it took her only 1 night to figure out the answer. That was Sphinx's ultimate goal: revenge. The 2 girls were handcuffed and taken to an old woman who had to rely on a breathing tube to survive. It was Sphinx's mother. She was pushed down the stairs by her husband 20 years ago. Her brain was severely severely damaged and she was paralyzed. Only her senses remained. Sphinx's father was a bastard. His actions had left him unable to reproduce, so he raised a flock of game birds in the backyard as his own children. In a mysterious room were 3 masks. The camera was showing Minky and Lena's daily life. This kidnapping was a plot that had been planned for a long time. Sphinx told the 2 girls to sit in front of the wooden table and continued playing the second tape. More than 20 years ago, Sphinx's father invited 2 men over to choose masks of their choice. These 2 men would later become Sphinx's subordinates. One wore a lion mask and the other wore a tongue mask. Then her father led her in. Lena closed her eyes, not daring to look any further. Minky was still trembling with fear at the image that appeared before her eyes. The tape finally ended. Sphinx explained her plan. As long as she found out who the man in the bull mask was in the video, the 2 girls would be released. The premise of the plan was that Lena had to completely transform into Minky. The 2 girls lived together every day, and their feelings grew deeper and deeper. Sphinx saw that the time had come, so she untied them. After many plastic surgeries, Lena completely took over Minky's face. The 2 stood side by side like twins. It was impossible to tell who was the real Minky and who was Lena. To show her sincerity, Sphinx gave Lena a gun so she could personally kill her stepfather. She recalled how she used that gun to end her feud with her father. But Lena was a soft-hearted girl. Hearing her stepfather's heartfelt apology, she hesitated. It was Minky who grabbed the gun and ended the man's life. The 2 subordinates with the lion head and the tongue were willing to help Sphinx because they were atonement for their mistakes. They even sacrificed their lives. But because Lena gave up halfway, the plan was forced to stop. Sphinx was rescued by the masked man and returned to the tent. Her body was weak, but she had let go of her hatred. Lena pretended to be Minky and returned to her home. It was the first time she felt so much love. Lucas's perseverance and Sarah's concern were not acting. They did not deserve to be the target of Sphinx's revenge. Maybe she was wrong. Lena, who was seriously injured, finally had a violent convulsion and took her last breath. Fortunately, she found her faith in love again. In her tragic life, Lucas and Sarah's concern filled the void in her heart. The policewoman found information about Lena. She had also gone missing 3 years ago. After Lena disappeared, her mother began to love her and set up a small altar for her. The empty room remained the same. The 2 younger sisters asked the policewoman to definitely bring Lena home. They also gave her the diary Lena had written before she went missing. It contained evidence of her stepfather's cruelty. The policewoman finally revealed the reason why she always investigated cases related to women. It turned out that she had also been abused 7 years ago, so she had to give birth to an unwanted child. But she didn't want to pass that pain on to the next generation, so she gave the child to a good family. However, every time she dreamed, she saw that abandoned child. It was like a curse that would never leave her life. Lucas found a photo of him with 2 men on David's computer. One was the masked man, the other was the tattoo artist that Lucas had visited. Lucas and Sarah were immediately alert. The tattoo artist must have lied. They both rushed into the tattoo shop. Sarah, who was always polite and reserved, turned into a beast when it came to her daughter. She grabbed a tattoo gun and pointed it straight at the tattoo artist's eyes. He was so scared that he had to confess that he was the masked man's best friend. Recently, he was blindfolded and taken to the tent. Then he tattooed wings on Lena and Minky's backs. Sphinx also told him to clean up the body. Lucas and Sarah identified the suspect to the policewoman based on the tattoo artist's description. They identified Sphinx, but when they got home, Sphinx and the masked man arrived first. They kidnapped Lucas's younger brother. Sphinx's target was only Lucas. Sphinx had just told the masked man to inject anesthetic into Lucas when the police arrived. The situation was urgent, so the masked man kidnapped Sarah and escaped. At that moment, Minky's younger brother rushed out with a baseball bat, distracting the other party. The policewoman took the opportunity to shoot the masked man dead. When the mask was removed, everyone was stunned. Under the mask was the forensic doctor who had examined the body of the man wearing the lion mask. Sphinx brought Lucas back to the tent. As soon as she got out of the car, she panicked because she saw another version of herself advising her to give up her hatred. She tried to calm down and brought Lucas and the psychologist inside to watch the tape, but she couldn't find any tape. It turned out that she had fallen into the police's trap. A few days ago, the wife of the man wearing the lion mask received a letter from her husband before he died. In the letter, he repented of everything he had done. He wanted to clear his conscience, so he secretly took the videotape. He also wrote down the entire plan of the Sphinx on paper. The policewoman and Sarah saw with their own eyes a little girl being carried into the tent. Participants were all wearing stone masks and tongues. The cameraman was wearing a bull mask. Sarah immediately recognized the girl when she was 4 years old. That was when she was pregnant with her youngest son. Lucas wanted to celebrate the birth of her child, so he took the whole family to visit a bird trainer's house. The bird trainer's daughter was Sphinx. From that moment on, Lucas forgot about the Sphinx family. family. There was only one place in the whole city that raised birds. The policewoman quickly looked up the records. Sphinx had a twin sister, but unfortunately she passed away when she was young. Sphinx was then raised by her father. 10 years ago, her father passed away. Sphinx took over his bird breeding business. Lucas met Minky again at his friend's house. He was so moved that he burst into tears. But Minky pointed a gun straight at his head. She forced him to repent for what he had done to Sphinx. The policewoman commanded the special forces to surround the tent. Sphinx seemed to sense something, so she told her mother that everything should end here. The special forces entered the room. She calmly removed her mother's breathing tube. Even though she was arrested, she still maintained her fearless appearance. The interrogation lasted for 3 hours. Sphinx refused to say anything. Minky and Lucas were missing. If it dragged on any longer, Lucas's life would definitely be in danger. At the crucial moment, the psychologist revealed to the policewoman that he had performed a hypnosis at Sphinx's request in the tent. From there, he saw the deepest memories in her soul. The first person to be carried into the room turned out to be Sphinx's older sister. Not long after that, Sphinx's sister could not bear the painful torture and passed away. Tragedy immediately fell on Sphinx's head. In extreme pain, Sphinx split into her sister's personality. Sphinx imagined that her sister was still living with her. One day, Sphinx's mother was pushed down the stairs by her father. At that moment, Sphinx saw Lucas bringing a bull mask. Sphinx unconsciously thought that Lucas was the one who wore the bull mask back then. This seed of resentment sprouted fiercely. She raised her gun and forced her father to reveal the names and addresses of the masked men that year. But she did not receive any information about the man wearing the bull mask. In a fit of rage, she pulled the trigger and ended her father's life right in front of her mother. Sphinx's uncle had loved his two nieces very much. After learning what had happened to them, he decided to take action to seek justice. Taking advantage of his position, he found Minky and Lena from the police records and then cooperated with Sphinx to capture them and take them to the training tent. At this point, Sarah finally understood why Minky told her to open her eyes after returning. Could it be that the person lying next to her for so long had also done such a disgusting thing? What was the truth? Perhaps we still had to wait for Lucas to admit it. Sphinx agreed to reveal the whereabouts of Minky and Lucas on the condition that police take her and Sarah there. In the car, Sphinx's personality kept changing between the gentle older sister and the vengeful ego that only wanted revenge. The two personalities fought for control of the body. Sphinx's original intention was to see Lucas's family destroyed with her own eyes, but the sister's conscience still remained in Sphinx's mind. In the end, Sphinx gave in during the struggle. She promised that as long as Lucas admitted that he was the one wearing the bull mask, Minky would be released to go home. Immediately after, under Sphinx's orders, Minky restrained Lucas. He was pressed to the ground and forced to kneel. But until now, Lucas still refused to admit his guilt. He only said that he had received money to help Sphinx's father reduce some documents. As for the bull mask, it was because he happened to see her mother fall when he arrived at Sphinx's house. He just picked up the cow mask next to him. Then Lucas walked past Sphinx. Lucas also felt that something was wrong, but he didn't think about it at all. Maybe he was a coward, a fool, but he was definitely not a bad person. At the same time, the police searched the tent. They saw in a photo Sphinx's mother wearing a ring on her hand. Even now, her fingers still had the mark of the ring. At this moment, the older sister's personality appeared again and told Sphinx to open her eyes. The two of them had already recognized the person who filmed the video years ago and the person who wore the ring. It was clearly their mother. It was just that neither of them dared to admit it. Those words were also confirmed by the police. Sphinx's final plan for revenge turned out to be just a joke. Maybe she was just trying to put all her resentment on an innocent person. That way, her childhood wouldn't be a complete tragedy. At least in her childhood imagination, there was still someone who cared about her. Even if that person was bedridden, unable to move, or maybe she had long since become just a lifeless corpse, her empty heart could not support her to continue living. Enemies she could easily deny. But for someone lying on a sickbed so weak that they could not resist, killing them was more humane than letting them continue to live. Therefore, Sphinx turned her hatred onto others, turning her hatred into a driving force for life. It was just that when that false veil was torn apart, it was like the dream she had drawn for so many years was broken, bleeding, and unable to heal. The movie ended here. Goodbye, and see you again.